Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Programming in Java. I'm your host Trey and today we're going to talk about selections. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So what comprises of selections? Well, essentially this is when you write programs that can choose or select different approaches of the output depending on the way you've specified those conditions. So let's look at an example using the English syntax, right? So let's say you're in a class full of noisy students, and then the teacher comes into the noisy class and says, if you don't stop making noise, I'll fail this entire class. What would happen if the class continues to make that noise? They'd fail, right? Great. So in this example, the teacher is you, the programmer, and the students are the user of that program. You get to dictate the way the program goes if the user adds input to your program using the scanner. So with that example, I think we generally understand what comprises of selections, right? So basically, these are steps to say, okay, will I go here or will I go there? Basically, I think later on you actually understand deeper as we get into selections. So we have this syntax, and like I said in the previous video, what we should know in Java or how to learn Java quickly is to know the concept behind it and also the syntax and how to execute it. So we've gotten basically the basic idea of what selections are. So these are basic if statements, if else statements, and all that. So now our syntax would be this. So if open our parentheses and we say condition, and then we open our bracket here and encapsulate that, and we say our block of code is there within that um, specified thing. So whatever we put in our condition in this point here, um, that's what's going to be executed in this if statements. And then else if condition and all that, and then if condition one, if condition two, and all that. So if is just to specify a certain condition to be executed. Else if is used to specify a certain condition or otherwise do some other condition, right? So basically say, okay, if this is not gonna work, let's try something else. So this basically what else if says. Nested if is a nested statement. These are just statements within other statements. So this thing. So notice that an if statement, a nested if statement has got this encapsulation here, and then within this encapsulated code, we have this code here, this if statement, and then we also have an encapsulated code, and it will go on for as long as you want. So I'll give you examples later on. But then else statement just says, okay, just do something else. Basic, right? Okay, so what are these selection statements? In Java, selection statements are used to control the flow of the program based on certain conditions, right? So now, the primary selection statements are if, else if, and else. These statements allow the program to make decisions and execute different blocks of code depending on whether certain conditions are true or false. Alright, so we have the syntax, we have the concept. Let's get into our first example. So let's use a scanner, right? And then you're interacting with your mother. Or let's just say I'm interacting with my mother. And then we say public class mom. And then we have a print main method there. And then we've got our scanner object input in place. So we say system out of print line mom. This is my mom talking and say good morning Trey. And then these are my options that I have been given. Given the option say good morning mom, 2 ignore, or 3 jump out the window, right, for whatever reason. And then here it tells me what is your reply. So basically I've been prompted to say, okay, choose your reply between the two. So now I declare this answer as an integer and input the next int, right? So now we say if. Now we have this type of operator here that we'll talk about later on, but then answer is the same as 1, right? And then we open that, and then it says this is the out of print line. Mom says I'm very well, thanks. Breakfast is at the table, and then else if 2, it's rude to ignore your mother like that, and else says mom is replying, why did you jump out the window? So here we're saying that depending on whatever I reply here or whatever value I input in this guy is going to execute according to that option. So now I have declared, say, if my answer here is equal to 1, right? So if I say good morning, mom, I'm going to get a reply, or my mom is going to reply, I'm very well, thanks. Breakfast is at the table. If I reply 2, right, or I ignore her, which is the option 2, what's going to happen next is going to say it's rude to ignore your mother like that, right? And then if I don't choose 1 and 2, I'm going to choose, this is automatically going to choose 3 for me and say, hey, why did you jump out the window? So let me give you a practical view of what I actually mean. So you got Java, mom.java, and we see our output here, which is mom, good morning, Trey. And then we have good morning, mom. And then let's just say I decide to ignore her. It say it's rude to ignore your mother like that. So you see how these guys are interrelated and interchangeable, right? Because I have put the value 2 there, ignore her, it will output this statement here because that's what I have declared in this type of scenario here, right? If I had input 1, I would have gotten this reply. If I had input 3, I would have gotten this reply. So that's how if statements work. They decide which course of action depending on what the user has put in. Let's try another example, but this time we use else as our benefactor here. So we got test area and testing the area of a circle, or basically, yeah, testing the area of a circle. So we import our scanner and we input Java, the scanner, and everything there. And then here we prompt the user for input and say input the area of a circle, right? And then we declare our radius as a double and we say input the next double, like that there. So we say if radius is less than 0, meaning if it's negative, system.out.println, please input a valid radius. Because radius of a circle is never going to be less than 0. It's either 0 or above. It's never going to be negative, right? So here we have an else statement that says double area is equals to radius multiplied by radius multiplied by 3.14159, right? So multiplied by pi. And then we have system out the println area is equal to area. So we have an if and we have an else, right? So let's try to look at our output. So we got Java test area dot Java, and let's try putting this value here. So we see that our value in this case is not less than 0 because 6 is greater than 0, meaning our value has executed. So we see that we have defined a condition, say radius should, if radius happens to ever be less than 0, then our program is going to say input a valid radius. You feel free to copy this line of code and you can just input it on your command terminal and see what output you get if you put in a negative value. You're going to get this output. If you put in a positive value like 1, 2, 7 or whatever, you are going to get the actual area using this mathematical calculation. So let's have an example of a nested if statement, right? So we import our scanner and then we've got a nested example and we have this guy here. So we have system.out.println input 2 numbers. So system.out.println input the first number x and then we declare that x as an integer and then we put in a second number which is y and we declare that as an integer as well. Good. So if x is greater than 0, right? First condition, if x is greater than 0, open this bracket here. And then we say if y is also greater than 0, then you open this bracket. Your output is going to be both x and y are positive, right? We are still in this if statement, mind you. So we say if y is greater than 0, right? Print out both x and y are positive. else system.out.println x is positive but y is not. So all this if and this else, these two methods are going to be printed out if x is going to be greater than 0, right? And then only this guy is going to be printed out if y is greater than 0, right? If y is not greater than 0, it's negative, it's going to print out this scenario. So this here opens and this closes. So this is a nested example, right? But if x is not greater than 0, it will just tell you x is not positive. Let's try to see how that actually turns out. So here we have input two numbers. First number -1, second number 5. And then now, because here we have input two numbers, right? First number x, which is that guy there, we put in -1. Second number, which is 5, we put in that guy there. So now, remember I said that if this value here is not greater than 0, then this entire structure of code here is not going to execute, and that's exactly what has happened. It has executed this guy here, which is different from this guy. So if you were to write this code again and then input a new value, which is actually greater than that, you would get either these two or whatever output you're going to get. So you can feel free, copy this code and try it out. Okay, so more on selections. Selections also have structures known as Boolean operations. So this is an expression that evaluates the outputs of values true or false. So a variable that holds a Boolean value is known as a Boolean variable, and true or false are literals, just like number 10. They are treated as reserved words and cannot be used as identifiers. So like I explained in a video on elementary programming when it comes to syntax and all that, true or false cannot be used as identifiers in a program. So that is very important. Okay, so we have Java operators, we got the names, and then example and the result using Boolean operations. So a condition, an if condition, uses Boolean expressions to be able to actually execute that condition. So we have our less than, right? In our previous example, we had radius, which is less than 0. This is never the case because radius is never less than 0. So that's false. It will give you a false value. Less than or equal to. So we have a less than operator there and an equal to sign there, and we say less than or equal to, and then radius is less than or equal to 0. It will also give you a false because this implies that there is a possibility that radius could be less than 0, and that is false, right? Yeah. So we have a greater than. So this is self-explanatory. If radius is greater than 0, that's true. Greater than or equal to, that's how you declare it, and then that's also true. Here we have our equal to there, and then radius. Radius here is supposed to be true because radius can be 0, but then if a radius is 0, then a circle is 0. So basically, you don't have a circle, right? So yeah, basically that's false. And then we have not equal to. So we have this question mark there, and then we get an equal to operator, and this is basically says not equal to. So radius not equal to 0 is true because radius, I mean, come on. So those are the Java operators and their names and how they are implemented. So these are Boolean values you can use in conditions. So you can feel free to try them out wherever. And then we have augmented assignment operators. So we have operators such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo. If you have done advanced mathematics, you know what a modulo is. And then Java allows you to combine assignment operators using the augmented compound assignment operator, right? So we have an augmented assignment operator, which is plus or equal to, which is an addition assignment. And these are basically used to at least make your code easier. we'll talk about how those are implemented later on when we're talking about loops. But basically, when you have your augmented assignment operator, this is how they come out. So our addition assignment, when we say I, when we declare a value as I, whatever I would be, we say I plus equals to 8. We are basically saying the value of I will be equal to I plus 8. So whatever that value is, so if we have I as 1, and then we say I plus equal to 8, you're going to get the new value of I is going to be equals to 1 plus 8, which is going to be 9. So you have added 1, or the value of I, to 8, and then that new value will be assigned to I. So meaning the value will change. Same thing as the subtraction statement operator. So if I is 1, and then you say I minus equal to 8, you're just basically saying I is going to be equal to 1 minus 8, which is going to be negative 7, right? So star equal to, or asterisk equal to, that's multiplication assignment. So if I is 1, we're going to say the value is going to be I is equals to I multiplied by 8, which is the same as 8. Division, same thing. And modulo, with modulo, you can try to experiment with that one. Yeah. So you can have an input like int count equals to 0, and then count plus equal to 1. Meaning count will say 0 plus 1. So meaning that value of count would be equal to 1, or this value plus this value, right? There we go. So I also want to talk about pre and post increment and decrement operators. So these are very important when it comes to loops, and like I said, we're going to get into that later on. So the increment operator, plus plus, and the decrement operator, minus minus, are used for incrementing or decrementing a variable by 1. So this is very important concept because this is a concept that is very much linked to loops, especially for loops, and we're going to get into that later on. But I plus plus is pronounced as I plus plus, I minus minus, I minus minus, like so. And in as much as they're the same, pre and post increment and decrement operators have a huge effect on code. So here's a table that illustrates the differences, and we've got an operator there, a name, explanation, example, and output if I is equal to 1 and k is equal to 1 as well. So our plus plus variable, this is a pre-increment because it comes before the variable, and increments this variable by 1. So meaning whatever value we choose there. So let's just say we have, if I is 1 and k is 1, right? So I is going to be equal to, if we declare I equal to plus plus k, this plus plus k will say 1 plus k, right? So meaning 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2. And if this 2 is assigned to 1, then our output is equal to 1, I is equal to 2, and k is equal to 2, right? Post increment, decrement, post increment operator there is going to be for variable plus plus. So increments variable by 1 as well. But then the difference is int I is equal to k plus plus. So meaning if we were to declare I is going to be equal to the variable that is declared as k, but k, however, is going to be incremented by 1. So meaning I is going to be 1, but k is going to be equal to 2. And the same with the decrement operator. So decrement, basically just subtracting, increment, you're adding. So you can feel free to write this table, and then you can experiment with your code if you like. And finally, when it comes to operators, we have logical operators. This includes not, this exclamation mark, and if you were to say and, we use these guys, or this guy, and nor, which is that guy. Okay, so let's get into some actual code using these operators, right? So suppose you want to create a program that lets a first grader practice an addition. The program randomly generates two numbers and asks the first grader to answer and prints out true or false. How would you write this program? So first things first, we see that this program requires interaction, so we import the scanner, right? And then we name this class addition quiz. We import everything that is needed to be written, but then we're going to import something called math.random, and we're going to talk about that in the next video from this. But right now, just know that this is a method that generates random numbers, right? And then we say, since in the auto print, what is number 1 plus plus. Notice that this is encased in a string literal, so meaning this is what's going to be output. And then number 2 equal to this. I think I haven't talked about concatenation. So let me talk about concatenation here. So concatenation makes you write a lot of things within a print line method, and it is operated, or it is declared using a plus. So when you put in your string literal there, and then you say I want everything to be on the same line, so you say what is plus the number 1 that's here is going to be represented there, and then this plus here, this string, and then you plus it there, number 2 plus that string there. So basically you're saying get this and that and this and that and put them all into one line. So that's what these pluses are for. In case, I don't know why I forgot to talk about these, but yeah. Anyway, so I got int answer is equals to input dot next int, and then now we see that we have our boolean operator, which is equal to there. So these are the equals operations, and then since the auto print line, we enclose this entire scenario here. We say number 1 plus number 2. Notice that this guy is enclosed within parentheses, so meaning this guy is some sort of method. So number 1 plus number 2, we're going to get the answer here, right? Because our mathematical operation declares that number 1 and number 2 give us the answer, right? So number 1 plus number 2 is going to equal to that, and then we're going to say, is this the same as the answer that's here that the first grader, has input? Great. So if it is, it will output true, and then comma there, the answer is that exact value. If it's not, it's going to say false, and then say if the answer is number 1 plus number 2. So you can write down this code, and you can just try to experiment it and see how well it works. Okay, so finally, we're going to talk about what switch statements are. And if statements make selections based on a single true or false condition, right? We've talked about this. Overuse of nested if statements make a program difficult to read, and Java provides a switch statement to simplify the coding for multiple conditions. So basically, a switch statement makes using selections easier by doing away with the if statements themselves. So the default case is optional and can be used to perform actions when none of the specified cases match the switch expression. So we have our if condition here, right? But rather than using an if, and then we have nested if everywhere, if everywhere, if everywhere, we can just say switch, and then we get our condition there, and then we open our parentheses. Switch is in lowercase, so that's the syntax that's there. And then case is also lowercase, right? And then we have value 1. Statements you want to be executed and break. Case value 2, case value 3, all the way that side until our default. So like we said, the default case, which is optional, can be used to perform actions when the none of the specified cases match the switch expression. So when it comes to the if and the switch statements, if is basically case, right? And then default is else. Simplified like that. All right? Good. So the break statement immediately ends the switch statement, regardless of whatever it is. If you do not add a break statement, you will have a syntax error. So you always have to break your statements here, because with this guy, I'm going to show you the difference between if you use a break statement and you use that. But do not forget to use a break statement when one is needed. Once a case is matched, the statements starting from the matched case are executed until the break statement or the end of the switch statement is reached. This is referred to as fall-through behavior. Let me give you an example of fall-through behavior. So we have public class switch statements, and then we say int weekdays is equal to 1. So we want to have code that outputs the weekdays, right? Good. So here, because case 1, 2, 3, and 4 do not have break statements, we are going to get an output of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So the code is going to execute until the line that has a break statement. So until it reads this break, it will execute everything before the break here. So our output will be something like this. So Java switch statements to Java, and then we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we see that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday here, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday do not have break statements. This is known as for through behavior. It will keep falling and falling and falling and falling, and if you do not add the break statements in the entire case file, then everything within your switch statement will be printed out. That's just an example using um, switch statements and for through behavior. But then let me give you a more detailed example. So we have our handy command prompt there, but first things first, we use switch statements to illustrate the earlier example for my conversation with my mother. So we have system.out.print line, mom, good morning, Trey, and then here we have choose your reply, right? So we have one, which is good morning, mom, how are you? Two, ignore her. Three, jump out the window, right? So int ans is equals to input dot next int, and then we have switch answer here. So switch here, and then we say case one. Case one is going to system the other print line. Mom is going to reply, I'm very well, thanks. Breakfast at the table. Case two, mom is going to reply, it's rude to ignore your mother. Case three, mom's going to reply, hey, why did you jump out the window like that? So let's try to see our output here. So if we have Java, mom switch.java, and then we have our outputs there. So as we can see, we have that output there. And then if I say to ignore her, and then mom is going to reply, you know it's rude to ignore your mother. We see that we've only gotten this guy. And rather than using if else, if else, if else, if else, this code actually makes our lives way easier. So that's basically how to use switch statements. Okay, before I end the video, first I need to talk about a concept known as casting. So this is an operation that converts a value of one data type into the value of another data type. So we have widening a type, where widening, also known as implicit casting, is the process of converting a variable from a smaller data type to a larger data type, basically widening the same type. This happens automatically, and there is no loss of data because the larger data type can represent all possible values of the smaller type. Then we have narrowing a type, where also known as explicit casting, is the process of converting a variable from a larger data type to a smaller data type. This requires explicit user intervention, and there is a potential of loss of data if the larger data type cannot represent all values of the smaller data type. So I talked about truncation in the previous videos, and truncation is basically a form of narrowing a type. So an example could be system.out.print line in 1.7, meaning we are going to only get the output of 1 here because we've truncated this value. We've declared this value as an integer, so if we've declared this value as an integer, it means that we're going to do away with this point value here. So this guy, gone. We're just going to have 0.5. And then same example of narrowing, we could say system.out.print double 1 divided by 2, which returns a value of 0.5 rather than 0. So this is an example of widening a type. So we could have a visual representation to help us understand the difference between these two values. And we have examples of casting. So we have implicit widening, and then we got widening casting, and then we declare this value as an integer and name it as 10, and then we call it a double, right? Say this integer value here, double, and then we say double value is equals to int value. So meaning we say this double value is equal to this int value, and if this double value is a double data type, then this int value is also going to be a double, right? And implicit casting here, we are widening this. We're widening the range of this value here. So we say system.out.print int value plus int value there, and then we have center out the double value there. So if we have our output there, and then we have this guy here, widening casting, and then we see our output there, which is int value 10 that we put there, and then our double value is going to be 10.0 because we have widened its range. So you can put a float there and see whatever range you have there. But what if we want to show this guy for explicit casting? So we create a new terminal there, and then we say we narrow the cast there, and then we say this double value, which is 10.5, and then we use this type of syntax here. We declare this value as an int using the parentheses and say int value is equal to int double value, right? So meaning we have taken this double value and declared it as an int using this type of guy here. And then we say cylinder out the print line double value equals to double value there, and cylinder out the print int value and that. And then if we were to get our casting there, we see that we get our values of double value, which is going to be 10.5, and then we have narrowed it down to an integer, and our value is now 10. So I hope that helps you understand the difference between implicit or widening and explicit, which is narrowing. So summary of everything we have discussed largely on selections, operators, and talked about casting. And my exercise for you in this video is going to be write a program that uses if statements, and also a program that uses switch statements. Also write a program that uses Boolean, increment, and decrement operators, and write a program that casts data types. Alright, so with that being said, I think our next video is going to be mathematical operations, strings, and characters. And with that, we get to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you all